Hey, welcome back to another exciting week of YOML, a year of magical learning. And today, the first of the week is we have the three-part series, right, Chris? Book 144,
It
part one
is.
of three, and we want to talk about what Will Smith want to talk about.
This was the first book when I first started writing all these reflections, I gave myself the rule that you could write one reflection per book, except for your top 5 favorites, you can write up to 5. That was the rule that I gave myself when I started this thing out. Because I was like, I knew there was at least 5 books that I'd already read that I was like, man, there's just way too much I want to say about these books. So like I gave myself a little bit of permission to do that. So I had that all planned out. I was like, one book.
Yeah, don't for permission.
Exactly. So I ironically I get to Will Smith's book, and I don't know why. It was a really good book. I really, really loved it. And for whatever reason, I had a lot going on in my mind after I got done with it, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna break the rules. I'm gonna write 3 reflections for this one. And I was like, man, and then it opened the floodgates after that. So you'll start to see as this journey goes on, there'll be a lot more
It
books.
doesn't matter. All we want is what can we learn from you today?
Exactly. It wasn't just about I'm glad that I did that too, because there's so many other learned and applied.
You're skimming out on us
Right,
with all those nuggets of information that could help us with our lives and whatnot.
Exactly. So today's reflection for Will Smith's book, his autobiography, is called Method Acting. Here goes. The book, if in case you don't, I guess you've lived under a rock for your entire life. Will Smith is one of the biggest Hollywood stars in the world, an amazing rapper slash TV, icon with Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, producer of movies, and his kids both are, pretty famous. And he has a famous wife named Jada, who is also a famous actress. Like, they're basically like Hollywood power couple kind of people. I mean, if you don't know who Will Smith is, then I don't know, like, what's wrong with you? But
it doesn't matter. All we want to know is, what has he uncovered the diamond in the rough, and just give to us polish, and then we'll take it and we use it for our lives.
Yeah, for sure. So this book's all about his life, right? From birth until to present day. His book was released like 2 months before the whole Oscars, slap thing. I felt like I finished it before that whole Oscar slap. But I had a whole different take on that whole entire experience, because like listening to his book and then going through this whole entire thing, I kind of actually knew where that came from, and I felt kind of bad for him, honestly, just because he's got a lot of going on in his head right now, trying to shift his own life. You could just see that he was competing with himself. There's a lot going on in that brain up there. I hope he figures it out, because he's a really good guy, and I really enjoyed his book. Anyway, on to the reflection. So this reflection title is called Method Acting, another book that Felicia and I did together, and just kind of fun backstory on how this one came to be. Every book that we had done up until this one together was like, maybe like they've all been audiobooks, because you got to listen to them together. So they were maybe like 5-7 hours max or something like that, audiobooks. I think maybe we did one that was like 10 hours, and it felt like it took forever, because we only would ever listen to them on walks together, which we would take every night, but it was only like 20-30 minutes with the kids or whatever. So it took a while. It always would take like 3 or 4 weeks before we would finish any book. So she comes to me and she's like, hey, I really want to do Will Smith's book. And I go, okay, sure, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I don't know anything about it. And I was like, why do you want to do that book? And she was like, I don't know. I heard it was really good. So I went to go look at it on Audible, and it was like 16 hours. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, Felicia, like, we can't, like, this will take us like 3 months to finish, And she was like, I don't care. Let's check it out. So, when your wife says to do something, you do it. We had actually ended up finishing this in 2 weeks. We both loved it. Like, it was just like, she was listening to a book. Anytime that we could find some free time, we were like, hey, turn on a Will Smith book or something like that. It was like Saturday morning breakfast. Like, let's turn on the Will Smith book. Like, it was a really good book. We both really enjoyed it and had a great experience. Now, on to the reflection, though. So one of the things that I just couldn't get out of my head after listening to this, the first movie that Will Smith ever did, if you don't know, Will Smith was in this really famous TV show called The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So his rap persona was the Fresh Prince. DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince was his rap persona. The show was pitched to him to become the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So to have this hip hop dude from West Philadelphia move to Bel-Air and move in with his uncle and his aunt, and kind of, poor inner city kid meets rich Bel-Air people was the whole premise of the show. So he had like this persona of this is Will Smith. He was this goofy, funny guy, from the hood, rapper, actor, whatever. He wanted to completely, as he went into Hollywood, he had his mindset on trying to become the biggest Hollywood star that's ever been. That was his goal. Like, when he set out to do movies, he was like, I want to be the biggest star, bigger than Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone, whatever. He's like, I want to be the biggest person you could possibly be, action star. He was like, in order to do that first, he was like, I got to convince people I can act. So he took this role in this movie called 6 Degrees of Separation.
No, I have not.
So he took this role as this movie called 6 Degrees of Separation. It was a serious movie. His role was he chose this role to play this con man named Paul. And this guy's persona was the exact opposite of Will Smith, the Fresh Prince's persona. They couldn't be further opposites. To get into the mindset of being Paul and to really put his heart and soul into it, he decided he was going to test out this type of acting called method acting, where he would pretend to be Paul in his real life for 6 months leading up to the production of the show, in hopes to like retrain his mind to like, you know, to think Paul, like not Will, I'm Paul, you know, and what would Paul do kind of stuff, right? So he does this and he shoots the movie and he gets the validation that he likes. Everybody's like, wow, he's an amazing actor. Like I didn't know Will Smith could do something like that. You know, he ended up getting everything that he wanted to get out of that movie in terms of exposure from it and experience. He did. So he got his foot into Hollywood, and that was his way he got into it. The weird thing was about this whole entire process for him, though, when he came back to his real life, back to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air shooting the TV show, he was no longer Will anymore. Like he was like, I kind of had lost myself. And he was like, I didn't see it, but all the castmates and his friends and his wife and everybody that was around him was like, something's wrong with you, bro. And he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just Will, you know? And he could not figure out, like, Paul was still kind of hanging on to Will, and he was, you know, kind of in this weird spot, right? So as I was hearing this, it started to make me think about this whole entire journey that we've been on together, and that Amelia and I have been on together for this past 2+ years, right? Like in a lot of ways, you know, it just kind of thought just sparked in my head. I was like, man, I've been kind of method acting myself for the past, you know, ever since the day that Amelia passed away, really. I mean, I purposely took on the persona of Amelia and what she taught me and all of her values of the life that she lived. And what I saw was a life worth living. And I dedicated my life to that, to honor her, to live for two, and to live my values as much as I possibly could, because that's when I get to spend time with her, as well as honor her life, as well as try to share her life through stories like this, through the book that I wrote, through all this other stuff. And so much so that we've taken this now for 3 years, and I don't even recognize who I am anymore before I was with Amelia. I mean, before I met Amelia, I literally sometimes don't even recognize the old Chris. Not that I'm like physically look different, not that I, you know, talk differently, not that I, whatever. My brain is just different now. The things that I care about, the things that I do every single day, the purpose that I live my life with, that was all spurred by my daughter and trying to live a life of purpose with her. It kind of just dawned on me. I've really been method acting myself for the past couple of years, but the only difference is I don't want this to ever go away. This is what the path that I want to be on. And I'm glad that I've been, you know, that my brain and I method acted, you know, what my daughter taught me, and kind of adopted her values as well, because like it's a way for me to stay connected with her. And it means a lot to me, and it's my purpose in my own life, you know? So that said, the power of just method acting in general, like the message that I wanted to share, that only happened to me because of the atomic bomb that went off in my life, right? Like, I don't think people need to have that happen. However, like if you could take the lesson of Will and what he method acted, and how clearly you can retrain your own brain to think differently, to live a life of purpose, to live a life differently, to live a life that you care about, to live a life of values, whatever it may be, whatever that life is, you could do it. And you can do it with help of your friends. You can do it with whatever you want to. Like, don't wait on something else to blow up your life before you make that decision, right? Is kind of the big lesson from this. But method acting is real. Like, pretend who you want to be and go do it. And then you will become that person eventually. So yeah, that's it. Love to get your thoughts. How can you leverage your values to method act like the person you want to be and impact your life?
Right. I think this just goes back to the concept with the rider and the elephant, right? Because if you train the elephant to behave a certain way, he thinks that's what you want, and he will immerse and, you know, soak in all of the things that you want him to do, and he will continue to do that as if that's right. So whether you purposely did that or you accidentally did that, he's gonna think that's what you want. Right. So in the end, mindset is the number one factor in terms of how your life can turn out. And if you can build a mindset for whatever values that you hold, those values will become part of you.
It will become you.
Right. Because you are the values and the values are you. And so I think method acting is one of the most effective way that I know of to get into that realm. Because you think like Chris in the past, before you talk about was the real Chris. You don't know that was the real Chris. That could be someone else's version of Chris, because when you're growing up, you essentially are trying to be somebody expectations of Chris. Whether that's your mom, your dad, your friends, or the TV, society, whatever, they expect Chris to behave a certain way. They expect Chris to be this white guy, you go to college, be fraternity or whatever,
Right.
act a certain way. You basically get molded by the values, and whether the values is yours or someone else's, right? And so you're being molded. So the Chris before the atomic bomb is a Chris, but it's not the true version of Chris. The true version of Chris is whoever Chris wants to be, not what other people want to be. So your value is going to determine whether or not that's the true Chris. And the only way for us to undo what we have been molded into is to take our core values, figure out what kind of role needs to be fulfilled, and we fill that role. And eventually you will immerse yourself into that role and become that person for real. And so I think that to me, that's brings me a very, I guess, a positive feeling about how we can change ourselves to the person we want to become. A lot of people want to, but they just don't know how. And I think method acting, brought up by Will Smith is one of the most effective way that I've seen today. And I totally agree with what you're saying as far as pretending to be Paul and act as if you're him, and eventually your subconscious believes it.
Right.
So a lot of people say, if you lie to yourself long enough, you eventually will believe your own lies. And to me, it sounds true, because if you continue to build the habit and do the things that you do every day, your brains, i.e. your elephant, will think that's what you want and will absorb it and will continue to manifest that kind of behavior. And eventually you don't have to undo it, because it's up to you now to either continue to let the elephant think in that way, become this new role, this new person, or you can change it. If you don't want to change, you don't want to go back to the earlier version of Chris. And certainly I don't want to be the earlier version of myself, right? Because I think I'm better now than I was before. I've seen through the lens of clubbing and clubbing member, I see myself as a different person. I immerse myself in different activities, and these activities becomes who I am. What I do becomes like my value of who I am. What I do is who I am, because it's not about me saying, hey, I'm this, I'm that. You are judged by your actions, not by what you say. And so in order for you to become somebody, if you're not happy with the way that your life turned out today, and you think you know what that version of yourself should be, you should start to method act into that role. And for Will Smith, now he did that like 2 weeks.
No, I think he did it for like 6 months. I mean, but it takes time. Actually, I mean, but
eventually it will.
It does.
But you're talking about like entire lifetime,
right?
Versus the 6 months of, hey, I need to become this other person. You can method act yourself into becoming that person for real. And when you do, and you carry that core value with you, you're gonna like who you are. You're gonna like who you hang out with. You're gonna like the surroundings and your environment.
I don't know exactly when, for me, that the stuff that I do these days, I don't need to think about the pain of why I do them anymore. I think, and I don't even really need to think about immediately a lot of times why I do. I just know that that's why I'm doing it. Like it's like, I don't know when that transition happened. I know it's been like that for a long while now, for probably.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this for 3 years, so I'm imagining for 6 months.
I do feel like it was through a lot of that writing of the original book, that I feel like, and then the club and stuff that we were doing. Honestly, I don't know that I could have gotten to the point in time where I feel today without you and other people in Clubany and other people to help support me through, like, that's the whole side of the meaningful relationship side of the Clubany world. But like, if you really want method acting to stick, you need people. Like, that's the thing is Will Smith. Here's a point I just thought of. Like, when Will Smith came back to his real life, as Will, people were like, I don't want Paul around me, and he was like, I don't want to be Paul either. So like, that was when it was weird, right? When people were like, hey, go get Will back, and that was, for me, it just it was so weird to think like, man, who is Will Smith? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, wait a minute, I can just go off somewhere and become somebody else. Like, it's got to be trippy for an actor like Heath Ledger and as Joker and Batman. Like, I remember one of the things that he said, he was like, that thing really screwed up his brain, like really bad, you know, because he really immersed himself into thinking he was a serial killer psycho, you know, person, and really messed up his brain after the shooting was over, and he couldn't kind of get out of that funk. You know, he got really depressed. Like, it was really gross and ugly for him. And I don't know, maybe that led to one of the reasons how he ended up where he ended up, you know, and passing away.
He's too good at it.
Right.
I mean, he's just too good at being the Joker.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I really think that would kill
that's
him.
the pros and cons, right? Because it messes up with your mind. And to me, that's what I'm saying before. Mindset is everything. If you say I'm a writer, right? You will write. You will behave as if you're a writer. You will, you know, get up and start to write something. If you claim the role, whatever that role is, you will eventually pick up some of these habits and behaviors of those. And if you want to become the Joker and, you know, immerse himself too well into that character.
Yeah. Because
of that, he inherits the psychological distress as well. And I think that's what creates this traumatic, you know, whatever that is that he went through. It's traumatic for him because he's a normal human being. He didn't have the dispositions to control the...
Yeah, it wasn't his values.
Right, because it goes against his values.
Right.
And so there is an internal conflict for him. But like I said, you know, it's a good way to become who you want to be.
Yes.
If you want to be an actor, right? Well, claim that role. You want to be a writer, claim that role. You want to be a programmer, an entrepreneur, you claim it. You claim that role. So I am an entrepreneur. I am a writer. Once you pretend to be Beaver,
you dropped it in there.
You're gonna want to build that.
We need to have like a little Beaver counter, like, you know, in the corner. It's like, ding, Beaver. You know, yeah, one Beaver in the episode. Now I have like 5 Beavers that would pop up. Beaver. You know, yeah. Oh, we should totally do that. We should someday. We actually want to edit these things if we ever do. Like, we should totally have like a Beaver counter somewhere.
And then we can do a tally of all the Beaver reference throughout all the podcast episodes. And see how many did I mention Beaver?
What do you think we're at? Do you think 200 beavers so far?
Probably more. How many beaver have we mentioned in this one?
Oh, I mean, shit, we've had 10 beavers already. Like, you know, now 11. That's funny. No, I mean, I really do think this is like, don't method act the stuff you don't want to do. But it's funny when you like, I don't want to call living your values method acting. Like, the weird thing is like,
the thing is that you're not always at a stage where you have to, because you are already you are performing another role.
Right.
You're performing a role that was given to you by society.
You're always method acting. Like, we've talked about this in the past. Like, you're either living your values or you're living somebody else's values.
Because if I go to school and I start a fight, right? What do you think happens to me if I start a fight?
You get kicked out of school.
They say you got to go to detention,
right?
Go to correction, right? Correction hall, right?
Detention.
If I go to school and I start a fight, right? I was told I can't do that. If I go to school and I skip the line, I was told I can't do that. Right? I go to school and I say, you know, I want to color outside the line. I was told I can't do that.
Right.
I go to school and I speak out of turn. I was told I can't do that. So I was being told how to be me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's been drilled into you since you.
So these roles are not yours. You didn't create your own role. Someone else created for you.
Yeah, I agree.
So you are right now, whoever you are, if you are alive, you are playing a role.
Right.
Whether that role is something you want or not, by chance. And chances are it's not.
Yep.
What you want. So that means you have to be able to transitions into the role that you want. You have to method act into it, because you can't just say, I'm going to start, you know, how can you go from one role to another role? You have to know how, if you want to be a writer, a painter, right? Then you got to think about, you know, imagine yourself, put yourself in the shoes of a painter.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you gotta do it.
And if you know the method, then I think it's easier and faster for you to become that role. But if you don't, then you do it by trial and error. But eventually, if you make it to the other role, transitioning from this role to the other role, you will have the method act in one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, you have to. There's no other option, really. The big difference for me is like when I'm thinking about this, I keep thinking of it like in the actor sense, where they're pretending to be somebody that they're not. Like that's not what we're talking about.
So you have to know, how would I act? How would I, if I'm not that person and I want to become that person? Let's say you have a role, you have a movie role, say, hey, you're this entrepreneur or you're this beaver being, right? How would you behave so that people believe you are a beaver? How would you behave so that you believe you are an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
So I think acting is still a valid word in this context.
Do you remember Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights book? You remember when he used to always say, you know, I got to find my man? He said that like all the time about when he would get a new character. He was like, I got to find my man. He'd have to really invent somebody. Like, what do they care about? What do they do? What's important to them? What's not?
He did method acting as well.
All the time. I mean, that's when he did his, you know, all right guy. He was just sitting around thinking like, what would this dude say? You know, and that's what came to him spontaneously. It was like, you know what I love about them high school girls? Like, you know, that wasn't him speaking. It was the character.
Was it a character?
Right.
I think it applies in real life as well, because if you want to be that person, you want to be.
What are you about to say, Beaver?
If you want to be somebody, you have to first act that role.
Yeah.
In order for you to become. You cannot just automatically just become. It's not possible. There's a transition period. And acting is that bridge. So I don't see how you can take the word act.
So the fun thing about, you know, Amelia, not fun, but the interesting thing about Amelia is like endurance and enduring was not a value that I even remotely held ever. Like, I mean, I was a sprinter. Like like you wouldn't ever catch me running longer than a mile. And if I did, like, it was because somebody like literally
chase you,
had chasing me. Yeah. Or something like that. Like, I mean, but I ran all the time, but I sprinted. Like, I mean, I would go as fast as I could in everything that I did in life. Like Amelia she's an endurance. She's a marathon runner. I mean, she's like, enduring is one of my core values now, right? Like what we talked about. Like when I think of myself, I run every day. I mean, every damn day of my life, I run now distances, you know, long distance.
This is what you do as well. You are method acting.
It was literally how I got out of bed the first day, you know, and every day after that. I mean, she's a part of me at this point in time and how she lived her life. And I'm damn proud to have adopted her values and helped me to mold them with Chris before, with now Chris afterwards, so we can live a life together, which is what I call living for two. I mean, that's literally what it is, you know, and that's what I think about every single day. It's like, it's not me doing this stuff, it's us doing this stuff, because that's how I get to connect with her, and that's how I get to still think to do stuff with her in my life, you know. And so I mean, you just,
because the thing is, that's how you inherit some of her core values, because enduring wasn't your value, but you ask yourself, what would Amelia do? And then you basically, if I were Amelia, what would I do? Right? You basically become her, method act as her role, and you take on her values.
100%. I mean, you see that all the time with Jesus Christ, right? You know, I mean, like, hell, there's the what would WWJD, like, what would Jesus do? I mean, like, you get taught your
I mean, it changes your behavior. You think about it. I mean, if you ask what would Jesus do, it changes the behavior, because you know how Jesus would behave. Jesus wouldn't go and bang somebody over the head.
Right.
With a baseball bat, right? So you wouldn't do it because you method act into his particular characteristic.
We do that in church every day. You get taught that your entire life. That's a part of our being, you know, of like, how do you think about what would Jesus do? Or see God in everyone, right? Like, and what does that mean? It's just really interesting to think about how much we can train our elephants. If you put it toward a good positive thing, it can be great. If you put it toward a negative thing, you could become Heath Ledger. But here's the fun thing is you can always, like, if any actor out there ever tries to like legit method acted, like, you know, my advice to them would be make sure that your core values of who you want to be are rock solid. So you can always have that compass to get back to who you were.
Going into the Inception concept.
Yeah, pretty much. And you're going to be like, who the hell was Will Smith?
Up, which is down, which is real, which is fake.
Yeah.
Dream within a dream within a dream. Which one?
right. To get back to that's your core values, right? Your actual core values you got to spend to get back into reality after method acting.
You need breadcrumbs, or you need some kind of string attached to the cornerstone of where you need to get back to.
Right.
You get lost. And the thing is, like, if you lie yourself long enough, eventually you will believe your own lie.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so method acting and pretending to becoming one person long enough, your conscious will think it's real.
It is real.
The good thing is you can use it to become somebody good, somebody who you want to be. And the bad thing is if you become a person without your own conscious of it, then you can turn into this, bad person. You let somebody else's write your own story.
You find yourself yelling at a waiter and some bougie New York City restaurant, and you're like crying about your sparkling water wasn't crisp enough or something, like, and all of a sudden you look up and you're like, what the hell am I talking about? Like, this isn't who I want to be. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent now. I know we're probably past time because we did an activity beforehand today. Any final thoughts?
I would say, to drive the point home, instead of asking what would Jesus do, ask what would the real me do. What is the you that you? I, as in the person you want to become, do.
Now you're getting into like really deep talk where I call that God, actually, because then you're just talking to God. No, you are. That's what I'm saying. Like, this could be a rabbit hole topic to go down for a very, very long time, because I truly believe that, like, when I'm talking to myself, I'm not just talking to myself. I could talk to somebody else in my own head, but it's me, but it's also God, but it's also whatever I want it to be, really, to be able to reflect those ideas back to each other and to help guide each other. Anyway, we could.
All we have to do is figure out who you want to be and pretend to be that person until you become that person.
Agreed. That's it.
Yeah.
The question we can leave for everybody then is, how can you leverage values to method act like the person you want to be to impact your life? Something to think about. It's a valuable lesson, I thought. Glad we talked about it, and we will see you tomorrow night.
Sounds good. Good night.